oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, à cause de la pandémie,
Mr. Speaker, because of the pandemic, there is a crisis for mental health. There's also been a wave of domestic violence throughout the country, including Quebec. Yesterday, we saw the seventh woman beaten to death by her husband. Existing programs are not working. What needs to be done now to stop this violence?
Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for 50 years, the government has been trying to fight domestic violence, and we continue to do so with record investments in opportunities for women and initiatives against domestic violence. We've taken measures to restrict firearms, which do counter domestic violence. We've had an inquiry on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and we will continue to work with every member of this House to fight domestic violence and gender-based violence.
Le chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
the Minister's chief science advisor is warning against the government extending the second vaccine dose to 4 months. The scientists and physicians on the Prime Minister's immunization panel confirmed the only reason they are moving to 4 months is because the Liberal government has failed to secure vaccine supply. Will the Prime Minister admit he has a supply problem, not a science problem?
Minister.
We now have safe and effective vaccines available in Canada. We need to vaccinate as many Canadians as quickly as possible. To maximize resistance in Canada to COVID-19, NACI has recommended second doses can be safely delayed by up to 4 months. We will continue working with provinces and territories to ensure the communities are protected and that they're supported by science in the decisions that they make around spacing of vaccines.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Did the Prime Minister or his office task the National Security Advisor with investigating allegations of sexual misconduct against General Vance in 2018?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Ombudsperson came forward with allegations, the Minister quite rightly directed him to the Privy Council office to follow up on those investigations. We know that allegations of sexual misconduct need to be taken extremely seriously, need to be followed up on by appropriate authorities, not by politicians. That's something that Ray Novak emphasized in his appearance at committee. We will always take very seriously allegations of sexual assault. We will always stand up for the women and men who stepped forward while they serve.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Ray Novak consulted appropriate authorities. I have an email from the Prime Minister's former National Security Advisor saying that these serious allegations were never brought to his attention. He was the appropriate person that the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, should have raised these serious allegations to, but he was never told an investigation was needed. Why did the Prime Minister sit on serious allegations about sexual misconduct against the Chief of Defence Staff for 3 years?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Ombudsperson came forward to the Minister with allegations, the Minister quite rightly directed him towards the appropriate independent authorities. That is the role that politicians need to take. In my career as leader, as we have encountered allegations of sexual assault and harassment, we have always forwarded those to appropriate authorities for proper investigation. That is what needs to happen in this situation, in every situation. We know we need to continue to work to ensure that there are resources and recourse available for anyone who comes forward, and that we put an end to the culture that permits this.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Les Canadiennes méritent mieux.
Canadians deserve better. According to an email from the former advisor to national security for the Prime Minister, the allegations against General Vance were never brought to their attention. The person in the Prime Minister's office who's charged with opening an investigation was not aware of this situation. Why is the Prime Minister doing nothing about the situation for 3 years now. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, our government has always recognized that we must protect and offer resources to every man and woman who steps forward to make allegations. That's exactly what we've done here. The Minister of Defense directed the ombudsperson to authorities who had the ability to conduct an investigation independently and rigorously. We will always look to improve the process because no woman who serves in our forces should be subject to this and not have any recourse. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few days before crab fishing season opens, nearly 40% of the Cap-aux-Meules port is no longer accessible to fishers. This is a crisis, and the people of the Magdalen Islands are paying for it. We're listening for an answer that has a yes or no. Will the government make sure that there is immediate repairs to equipment or ensure financial compensation for the losses of fishers in the Magdalen Islands? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very concerned to see the challenges that Cap-aux-Meules is facing in terms of its facilities. We're working with local authorities and looking at what we can do to ensure the safety of fishers and everyone who uses these facilities. Also, we want to make sure that we can move forward with fishing season. We know how important this is for people of the Magdalen Islands, and we'll do everything we can to support them as a government. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. I was waiting to hear a solution. Mauricie has been working a long time on a high-frequency train that would go from Quebec to Windsor. That was an election promise of the Liberals in 2015, renewed in 2019. Still nothing. I remember comparing it to the Sasquatch. It's a mirage in a desert of public transportation. Yes or no? For people in Mauricie, will the high-frequency train be in the budget? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'm very pleased to be able to inform my honourable colleague that the budget will be tabled on April 19th, and he will have answers at that time. I wish to confirm that last week, or this week rather, when I was going through Trois-Rivières, I had an excellent conversation with the mayor of that town, and I highlighted our continued commitment and the dozens of millions of dollars that we've already invested in the high-frequency train. This is a project that the people of Trois-Rivières really care about. It also matters to all Quebecers and Canadians.
The Honourable Member, l'Honourable Député de Burnaby South.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During this pandemic, we saw the worst care conditions for our seniors in long-term care facilities that are for-profit. More infections, more deaths. In spite of all this evidence, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Bloc voted against our motion to remove profit from long-term care homes. Why is the Prime Minister choosing profit over the care of our seniors? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I understand, Mr. Speaker, that the Honourable Leader of the NDP started his career in a provincial legislature and is perhaps getting a little confused about where he is now. In Ottawa, this is the federal government, and we work in partnership with provinces, and we respect provincial jurisdictions. We all know that we have to work together to ensure better safety and dignity for our seniors, and we will continue to work with the provinces while respecting their jurisdictions.
Member for Burnaby South.
Real leadership is about finding solutions, not finding excuses. With this approach, we would have never have had universal health care in our country. It takes leadership. The proof is overwhelmingly clear. for-profit long-term care homes were the site of the worst conditions of care in this pandemic. We saw military go in and find that in for-profit long-term care homes, syringes were being reused. We saw expired medication used. Despite all the evidence, the Liberals, the Bloc, and the Conservatives voted against our motion to remove profit from long-term care. Why does the Prime Minister choose profits over care and the lives of our seniors?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can always respect someone who doesn't forget his roots, but I need to point out to the Honourable Leader of the NDP, he is no longer at Queen's Park. He is now in the federal House of Commons, where we respect provincial jurisdictions when it comes to delivering health care. We will, however, continually work in partnership with the provinces to improve outcomes for our seniors. We've seen far too many seniors vulnerable because of the long-term care situations they were in both profit and not-for-profit models. We need to make sure we're protecting all seniors across the country. That's exactly what this federal government will do.
Honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, at the beginning of my career, I was part of the Defence Committee, and we talked a lot about the Honour Operation, which was supposed to allow women to serve proudly in the forces in an inclusive and respectful workplace. Clearly, this operation has failed. Mr. Speaker, what I want to know is when the Prime Minister was made aware of allegations against General Vance. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this government has always taken seriously these types of allegations and will ensure that there is appropriate and independent follow-up. That's exactly what happened here. After the Defence Ombudsman received a complaint, the Minister directed them to the appropriate independent body that could lead an inquiry. We understand that there is still a great deal of work to be done in spite of what has already been done, but we will continue to move forward together on this. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, this government lacks transparency. We never have the right answers, enough cover-ups. The question is clear. When was the Prime Minister made aware of allegations against General Vance? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. For months, I have been answering this question. In the House of Commons, we always take seriously allegations. I was made aware that the Minister of Defence referred the Ombudsman to follow up with appropriate authorities. I only found out about these allegations in news reports in the last months.
Member for Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, under this Prime Minister, sexual misconduct at the highest levels in our Canadian forces continues unchecked. Serious allegations are ignored, investigations are shut down, critical evidence is lost, and charges are dropped. Those who are complicit through their actions or their silence remain in senior positions. This government's consistent failure to act begins and ends with this Prime Minister. What did the Prime Minister know, and when did he know it?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've answered that question a number of times, but we have demonstrated since forming government that we take extraordinarily seriously the responsibility to make sure that people are protected in their places of work, in their service to their country, and that we've brought forward mechanisms and measures that continue to protect them. We recognize there need to be more resources. We recognize there needs to be more work to end a culture that tolerates far too often inappropriate behavior. We will continue to move faster and stronger on exactly this issue.
Honourable Member for Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill.
This Prime Minister is defiant that he has consistently got it right for the men and women in uniform, but he failed to have General Vance suspended or allegations against him investigated. Still, he approved a salary increase of $50,000 for him. He approved a replacement Chief of the Defence Staff who also stands accused of sexual misconduct. And he continues to support a Defence Minister who has failed in his sworn duties. When will the Prime Minister hold senior officers accountable, starting with the Defence Minister?
Honorable Prime Minister.
We have no tolerance for any form of sexual misconduct. When such allegations are brought forward, we always take them seriously and forward them to the appropriate authorities. That is exactly what happened in this situation. The Canadian Armed Forces have launched an independent investigation on this matter. In regards to the pay increases, decisions on salary increases are made entirely by professional public servants, and we respond to the recommendations of those public servants.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's cover-up continues. So let's look at the Prime Minister's actual actions. On one hand, the Prime Minister very publicly speculated and directed the RCMP to charge Vice Admiral Mark Norman in March of 2018. But on the other hand, the Prime Minister claims he wouldn't and couldn't politically interfere in starting an investigation into the allegations against General Vance, also in March of 2018. Yesterday, the former military ombudsman called this flimsy political interference excuse.
I'm just going to interrupt the Honourable Member. If I can get him to start over, there seems to be a technical glitch in there, and we're missing parts of the question. We'll give it another shot. The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, let's look at the Prime Minister's actions. On one hand, the Prime Minister very publicly speculated and directed the RCMP to charge Vice Admiral Mark Norman in March of 2018. But on the other hand, the Prime Minister claims he couldn't politically interfere in starting an investigation into the allegations against General Vance, also in March 2018. Yesterday, the former military ombudsman called this flimsy political interference excuse both bizarre and weak. Why did the Prime Minister cover up these allegations?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As I've said, we always take all allegations of sexual misconduct extremely seriously. No one should ever feel unsafe at work. We will continue to work to change the culture in the Canadian Armed Forces so that no one ever feels like they cannot come forward with allegations of sexual misconduct. Since forming government, we have taken action to address and eliminate sexual harassment, not only in the Canadian Armed Forces, but across government. It is clear, though, that the measures we have taken haven't gone far enough, and we will do more and faster.
Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, some would call that a failure. Mr. Speaker, whether it's Vice Admiral Norman, SNC-Lavalin, the WE scandal, or General Vance, the Liberal playbook is so predictable. First, cover up the issue and pretend to be shocked when it becomes public. Then, throw money at the problem, in this case, a big fat raise for the general accused of sexual misconduct. And finally, when all else fails, blame the Conservative because that defines real Liberal leadership. When will the Prime Minister admit he turned his back on our troops by failing to direct his national security advisor to investigate General Vance 3 years ago?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, allegations of sexual misconduct or inappropriate behavior need to be followed up upon by the appropriate authorities, and that is exactly what happened in this case. The ombudsperson was directed towards the right people in terms of following up on an investigation. The ombudsperson was not able to share further information with the investigators, and therefore the investigation did not move forward. We will continue to take very seriously any allegations that come forward, as we always have. We will continue to work to ensure that there is a change in the culture and better systems in place.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister missed the mark twice. We're going to try again with yes or no in the answer. People are listening closely. Mr. Tremblay is 67 years old. He lives in Rimouski. He wants to know if in the budget there will be an increase in pension for seniors with no discrimination. Not something that's only going to start after age 75. Yes or no, if seniors between 67 and 75 will see increases in their pensions. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the political game that the leader of the Bloc Québécois is playing is disappointing because he knows that we cannot talk about what's in the budget before it is tabled in the House of Commons. I encourage seniors in Rimouski and everywhere throughout Quebec and Canada to be encouraged that we have committed to increasing pensions for seniors after age 75. We have committed to supporting seniors during the pandemic with record investments. We've even increased the GIS by 10% as soon as we took power. We will continue to support our seniors throughout the country. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, he just said what's in the budget. It's just not the right thing. Imagine once more that we could answer with a yes or a no. The citizens in Outremont are telling us, I want to know if health transfers will be increased unconditionally at the request of every premier by 35%. Let's say the citizen in Outremont wants to know this is called François Legault. Will this be in the budget, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As the member knows full well, I had a very good conversation with Monsieur Legault recently on the issue of supporting healthcare systems in the provinces and the issue of increasing investments or joint investments in things like the manufacturing of green energy, high-speed internet. We will continue to work hand in hand to make sure that Quebecers and Canadians have all the services they need during the pandemic and well after.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, whether it's destroyed documents with the BC Liberals, the gas plant scandal with the McGuinty Liberals, or the SNC-Lavalin scandal with these Liberals, what do they all have in common? Well, it's the senior advisor to the Prime Minister, Ben Chin. That's the same Ben Chin that Craig Kielburger thanked for helping to shape the CSSG in the WE scandal. So is the Prime Minister blocking the testimony of Ben Chin because he has dirt on the Liberal elite from coast to coast to coast?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am stunned that the Conservative opposition continues to talk about the WE charity in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of the concerns that Canadians have about rebuilding our economy in terms of the work that we're doing together. While Conservatives continue to focus on us, continue to focus on politics, we will stay focused on supporting Canadians. We will be focused on the families that need supports, the small businesses that need help across the country, the jobs that will be created through fighting climate change. These are priorities for Liberals the Conservatives don't seem to get at all.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, I agree with the Prime Minister that he is stunned. We also agree that they should be focused as a government on helping Canadians instead of helping insider Liberals. They gave $500 million to a company that gave members of the Prime Minister's family $500,000. They shut down Parliament, locked out committees, filibustered at committees. So the question is very simple. Will the Prime Minister let Ben Chin testify at committee, or is that the only job that he's looking to protect?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the Conservatives themselves pointed out a number of weeks ago, we are much more focused on supporting Canadians' jobs than we are our own. Our focus from the beginning of this pandemic has been on delivering for Canadians, on supporting families, on supporting small businesses, on helping workers through this pandemic, and yes, on building back better, which involves recognizing that the jobs of the future require us to be responsible about the environment, and we can't have a plan for the future of the economy if we don't have a plan to fight climate change. That, unfortunately, is what the Conservatives are trying to avoid at all costs by bringing up things that, quite frankly, have been answered months and months and months ago.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, for this Prime Minister, charity begins at home. His home. In fact, when little children across Canada donated their lunch money and pennies and their allowances to help poor kids in developed countries, somehow hundreds of thousands of dollars of that money ended up with the Prime Minister's family. He paid it back, of course, with a $500 million grant to the WE charity. But committee information on how much his family got is now contradictory. In writing, the total is $566,000. But in Kielburger testimony, it's $427,000. How much did his family get?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, while the Conservatives continue to play politics, we will continue to focus on the supports Canadian needs. While Conservative politicians continue to say we did too much too fast to support Canadians, we will continue to say we have your backs. And that's what we've had throughout this pandemic, whether it's direct supports to families, direct supports to workers, supports for the provinces and territories in their rapid testing, in their delivery of safe back to school for kids, or their support for the healthcare systems. We've continued to support Canadians. We've continued to focus on what matters to Canadians rather than Conservatives focusing on what matters to them.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Have Canadians' backs. He has his hands in their back pockets, Mr. Speaker. Now, the question was whether his family got $427,000, as the Kielburgers claim, or $566,000, as the written documents suggest. Either way, it's a lot of dough. Real, serious, true dough. Now, Mr. Speaker, the question we want to find out is what did this money have to do with influencing the Prime Minister's decision to give $500 million to this charity? Will he let his staff, who were involved in setting up this program, testify at the Ethics Committee so that Canadians can know the truth?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Canadians tuning into question period today might be puzzled to wonder why the Conservatives are suddenly going back to failed lines of attack that from many, many months ago. Well, it's all about short-term politics for them. It's all about trying to change a channel in the disastrous convention they just had last weekend. It's all about trying to find something that makes them relevant to Canadians. I recommend that if they want to talk about relevance to Canadians, they talk about how we're going to work together to deliver for families through this pandemic, grow small businesses as we recover our economy, and fight climate change to protect our future.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
The Honourable Député.
The Honourable Member. I think we're having a little technical problem here. Sometimes the sound and the video are not properly synced up. So I'm going to ask the member for Rosemont La Petite Patrie to start over. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals like to present themselves as allies of students, but it's just empty rhetoric. They have not only broken their promise to extend the moratorium on debt repayment, but they've also refused to abolish interest on loans. This is Liberal hypocrisy in action. The NDP has just proposed a plan to help students reduce their student debt. For the Quebec government, this would mean a transfer of hundreds of millions of dollars to help students. When will the Liberals really stand up to help students? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, this is a lot of nonsense, Mr. Speaker. We've supported students at every step. We suspended loan repayment. We doubled the Canada Student Loan. We set up the Canada Emergency Benefit for Students, which helped over 700,000 students at the post-secondary level, as well as recent graduates. We will always be there to support our young people who have really suffered during this pandemic and who will help us build back better.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Imagine what it is like being confronted by racial slurs, being spat on, being kicked and punched, and being killed. Racist verbal and physical attacks for Asian Canadians is on a sharp rise. In Vancouver, anti-Asian hate crimes went up 717%. Every attack is aimed at stripping us of our sense of safety and dignity. It is a clear message to say that we are not wanted and we don't belong. Will the Prime Minister stand with us by including anti-Asian racism in the National Anti-Racism Strategy and all the government's anti-racism policies and programs?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The rise in anti-Asian hatred and racism that we've seen over the past many months is absolutely horrific. It is unacceptable in Canada or anywhere else around the world. And as a government, as we've moved forward on anti-racism strategies with the Secretariat, with record investments, with support for various communities, we will continue to directly and specifically support Asian Canadians who have seen a horrific rise in hate crimes. It is absolutely unacceptable in Canada that we be seeing this, and I know we all in this House stand united on this issue.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, more than ever, Canadians need access to the internet now to participate in today's digital world. Having made the transition to working from home and taking courses online, people in rural Quebec need reliable connectivity. Can the Prime Minister update Quebecers on the progress being made on this issue? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to thank my colleague, the member for Châteauguay-Lacolle, for her question and her hard work. This week, I was very proud to announce, along with Premier Legault, a joint investment of over $800 million to fund accelerated broadband projects in the province of Quebec. This new investment will enable every Quebecer to be connected to high-speed internet by the end of 2022. We will continue to work in order to get all Canadian households in all regions of Canada connected in the coming years.
Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned that vaccine deliveries to Canada from Europe and India, two of the biggest sources of vaccines to our country, may be restricted. 92 countries have written formal exemptions from the EU's export control regulations, but Canada does not. Today, the Minister of Public Procurement declined comment to the Globe and Mail on how proposed restrictions might affect the delivery of EU-made vaccines to Canada. Can the Prime Minister absolutely guarantee that 0 doses of vaccines will be held back from the EU to our country over the next 2 months?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we share the urgency of all Canadians to ensure access to COVID-19 vaccines. We are concerned with the new reports of restrictions out of the EU, or potential restrictions out of the EU, and we will be continuing to work with our counterparts, including direct contact from me to the highest levels of the European Commission, in order to ensure that Canada's supply of vaccines is not in danger, is not interrupted. This is something that we are working extremely hard on, and we will ensure that Canadians continue to receive the vaccines that we need.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
It just blows my mind, Mr. Speaker. We've known this was a problem 2 months ago, and we still have no guarantees from the Prime Minister on that issue. So let's try another country. On top of EU restrictions, India has put a hold on major exports of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Has the Prime Minister contacted the Modi government yet to determine how many doses may be held back by India to our country over the next 2 months? And if so, how many doses may be affected?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on this file as well, we continue to work very closely with officials of both of our countries, ensuring that the promised doses continue to flow. At this point, we have no indications that the 2 million doses we will be receiving from the Serum Institute over the coming 2 months will in any way be affected, and we will continue to ensure that that be the case.
Honourable.
The honourable member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, from the beginning of this crisis, we have been supporting efforts to get Canadians vaccinated if they want to, and that's why we're so concerned today. If you look at what's happening abroad, India just announced that the AstraZeneca vaccine will no longer be exported. A competent Prime Minister would have seen this coming and would have prepared for it. But that's not the case. What does the Prime Minister have to say to the Canadian citizens who received the first dose but don't know when they will be able to get the second dose? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I don't want Canadians to be too worried about what the Prime Minister, about what the member opposite just said. I can reassure them that we will be receiving doses from the Serum Institute in India as promised in the coming months, and we will continue to work with all of our partners around the world to ensure the vaccine doses arrive in Canada as planned. The Conservatives are fear-mongering here, but I think people already have enough to be worried about, and I can reassure people the vaccines will continue to arrive and we will continue to protect them. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the best way to reassure Canadians would be to give them what they're owed. But the Prime Minister didn't do that. In December, he was saying, oh, the vaccines will be here, but in January there were 10 whole days where we didn't receive any vaccines and they couldn't explain why. Now, India and recently the EU have just announced that they're going to have stricter export controls on vaccines. So beyond all of this rhetoric, What is the Prime Minister's specific plan to reassure Canadians and tell them whether they will be able to get the vaccines that they are expecting, and particularly the second dose? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. You know, we saw this from the Conservatives a month and a half ago when the EU first talked about potential restrictions. They started fear-mongering and saying, oh, Canadians won't be able to get any vaccines, we're all going to be stuck. But we can reassure Canadians that, indeed, we will continue to receive vaccines. And that's exactly what we're doing. We will continue to receive those vaccine doses, and we are working very closely with the Indian government and with the EU leaders to ensure that there is no interruption in the arrival of those vaccines. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on January 27th, the House of Commons unanimously called on the Minister of Immigration to grant citizenship to Raif Badawi. 2 months later, nothing has happened. Mr. Badawi is still imprisoned in Saudi Arabia, and he is still not a citizen. The Minister of Immigration has the legal authority to act, and he could do so right now. But after 2 months, and after I questioned him yesterday and the day before, he was unable to explain the reasons for his inaction. So I have to wonder, is it the Prime Minister who is asking him to defy the will of the House? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for years we have been working on the Raif Badawi case. I myself have spoken directly to the Prince and the King to ensure that they take our concerns seriously when it comes to his detention and security. All Canadians want Mr. Badawi to be reunited with his family, and we are continuing to support them in every way possible. We are working on this issue, and we are continuing to work with it at the highest level. We will continue to work with all parliamentarians and to find every method possible to reunite Mr. Badawi with his family. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, once again, the House's request to grant citizenship to Raif Badawi was unanimous. Unanimous meaning it was supported by the Prime Minister as well. So let me recap, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Badawi's family and his lawyer are asking that he be granted citizenship. The House of Commons unanimously agrees. The Minister of Immigration agrees. The Prime Minister agrees. So, if everyone agrees, why, 2 months later, is Mr. Badawi still not a citizen? What's going on, Mr. Speaker? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in cases like this one, we always try to do things that will help. We're trying to get Mr. Badawi reunited with his family. That's always our priority. We are aware of the will of his family and of this House, and we will do everything that we can to reunite Mr. Badawi with his family, including having conversations at the highest level in order to underscore Canadians' desire to see this happen.
Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, documents released last week by Global Affairs paint a troubling picture of the naivete of this government in foreign policy. After a bit of pressure was put on the government by the arms export lobby and by Turkish authorities, and after the government was told that these arms exports would be used for the defense of human rights, the government buckled and naively reversed its earlier decision and approved these arms exports to Turkey. Will the Prime Minister now admit that this was a mistake?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when reports first came out about the possible utilization of Canadian technology in unsanctioned areas, we suspended the relevant export permits to Turkey because we take very seriously the responsibilities we have under some of the most restricted and constraining regulations in the world around arms exports. We will continue to push for proper accountability and transparency in arms exports, a system that was left in very shoddy state after 10 years of Conservative government that we were able to tighten up, and we will continue to ensure that we have full accountability and full transparency, including from our NATO allies like Turkey.
Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the documents also reveal something else troubling. The Liberal Party put its own self-interest first. The documents reveal that when the foreign minister met with his Turkish counterpart last September, the objective wasn't to discuss the Armenian Israeli-Azerbaijani conflict. It wasn't to discuss Syria or other regional conflicts. It was to promote the Liberal Party and Liberal insiders. It was to promote Bill Morneau's candidacy for the OECD. 19 staff were put on this job. Does the Prime Minister think it appropriate to put the Liberal Party's interest ahead of that of Canada's?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the tradition of Canadian leadership in multilateral institutions around the world is one that Canadians of all political stripes have supported over the past many decades. It has been important to have Canadians serving in the highest instances of multilateral institutions to ensure to advance our values and our interests, to demonstrate the competence and the commitment of Canada to shared global values and the rule of law, and the growth of the economy in ways that, for example, recognizes that climate change is an economic challenge that we all need to address together.
Well, member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, in light of these revelations, will the Prime Minister commit to not repeating the mistakes that helped fuel the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and that were contrary to Canada's interests and values in the region? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I can say that in my conversations with the Prime Minister of Armenia during this conflict, but also throughout the many conversations that we had, including several years ago, I stated that we would always be there with our brothers and sisters in Armenia. We recognize the challenges that they are facing as a country, and we will always support them, because this is a country with whom we have shared values and strong ties.
Honourable member for Markham Stouffville.
Mr. Speaker, it was deeply troubling to hear the Conservative Party of Canada reject adding climate change is real to their policy book this past weekend. Whether we're talking about measures to get through this pandemic or addressing the serious issue of climate change, facts and science matter. Can the Prime Minister please update this House and all Canadians on the importance of the environment when it comes to growing our economy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Markham Stouffville for her question and for her long-standing dedication to public health. Unlike the Conservative members opposite, on this side of the House, the debate is truly settled. Climate change is real. And unlike the party opposite, we, along with Canadians, investors, industry, and economists, recognize that a plan for jobs and growth must include a plan for the environment. Mr. Speaker, it is a simple fact, one almost all Canadians recognize. Unfortunately, the Conservative Leaders' Party has once again chosen to reject that.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, last week Chevron Canada announced that it is exiting the Kitimat LNG project after 7 years and $3 billion. Why is investment fleeing this world-leading project? Well, the Liberal appointee leading the Canada Infrastructure Bank said that risk and uncertainty are holding back private investment projects across the country. It comes full circle, Mr. Speaker. Liberals create risk and uncertainty and then blame investment fleeing Canada on risk and uncertainty. Can the Prime Minister please tell 4,500 more Canadian workers why their jobs are suddenly more risky and uncertain?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Global investors understand that climate change is real. The risk in their investments is often that there are mainstream parties in Canada, like the Conservative Party of Canada, that does not accept that climate change is real and that we need to act. There are provinces across this country that continue to fight against the simple fact of putting a price on pollution as a way of moving forward to fight climate change and create good jobs. The resistance to understanding that climate change is real is the economic risk that all Canadians and investors face because of Conservative parties.
I want to remind the honourable members not to turn on their microphones or keep them off if they're not asking you a question. It interrupts the flow of things. The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brook.
Well, Speaker, I look forward to the day when the Prime Minister finally recognizes that reducing emissions is more than just increasing taxes and virtue signaling. Speaker, we have a real plan. This project, Kitimat LNG, will reduce 40 million tons a year, Speaker, while at the same time displacing the influence of the bad actors right across the world. Not only that, capital is fleeing Canada, Speaker. We're seeing that Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities are being hurt right across this country. In fact, 16 First Nations had secured over $500 million in commercial partnership agreements. When will the Prime Minister finally get serious about reconciliation?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous communities across this country have long understood that in order to have healthy communities, one must protect the environment. Canadians across the country understand that in order to create jobs and growth, we need to fight climate change at the same time. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party continues to misunderstand and not realize that the only way to move forward with a plan for jobs and growth for the economy is to also have a plan to fight climate change. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do what is necessary to fight climate change while creating growth right across the country.
Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Maybe the Prime Minister could also update us on his $2 billion tree promise. Also, Speaker, the Prime Minister talks a good game about supporting reconciliation, yet Indigenous families, businesses, and communities are all being deprived by these Liberals. 16 First Nations communities have lost those agreements in training, employment, contracting, environmental stewardship, and many more. Indigenous people want certainty, they want opportunity. Instead, $35 billion has exited the country over the past 5 years. Liberal policies are hindering reconciliation, so when will the Prime Minister stand up for Indigenous communities and secure their future?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have continued to work with Indigenous communities across the country in creating economic investments and opportunities, while at the same time investing in ending long-term drinking water advisories, in opening new schools, in creating opportunities for investments and partnerships. We have demonstrated that reconciliation goes a lot further than just trying to get them on board for a specific energy project that the Conservatives seem to want. It has to do with creating opportunities for growth long-term, while at the same time fighting climate change and protecting the planet, and that is what this Liberal government consistently does.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil, Charles Lemoine. Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Conservative Party of Canada chose not to add climate change is real to their policy book. This is not a solution to climate change, and it will even make things worse, whether we're talking about a pandemic times or others. So can the Prime Minister explain why it's so important to take action against climate change? Thank you. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, I want to thank the member for Longueuil-Charlemagne for this important question. Perhaps the members across the way should spend less time asking questions about science and talking to people in Lac-Saint-Jean who are seeing more and more forest fires, or people in the Montérégie and the Outaouais region who have seen 2 historic floods in the last 2 years, or any other Canadian who knows that climate change is real because they feel its effects every day. Mr. Speaker, when the Conservatives refuse to acknowledge reality, Canadians can have confidence that our government will continue to take real action on climate change for future generations.
Honourable Member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Parliamentary Budget Officer slammed this government's infrastructure bank on its failure to get things built. He found that after 4 years, the bank has finalized investment in only 2 projects and spent only 3% of its budget. And the billions of dollars of private funding the Prime Minister promised, not a single cent has arrived. This government's privatization agenda has left communities without desperately needed projects. Will the Prime Minister finally stop trying to help his corporate friends turn a profit and instead focus on the needs of communities?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can understand that Skeena Bulkley Valley is a long way from my hometown of Montreal, but I can tell you that Montrealers see every day the construction going on with the REM, the electric transit system that is making a huge difference in Montreal already as it is being built. The Infrastructure Bank was a key partner in that, and we continue to invest in key projects right across the country. We know that investing in public transit, investing in infrastructure is the way to create jobs now and opportunities for the future, we will continue to deliver for Canadians from coast to coast to coast.